It is a common and deeply ingrained belief in our culture that there is a blueprint for success, a specific set of personality traits that one must possess to truly make it in life. We are sold the image of the charismatic, gregarious, and unflappable leader. The person who is never plagued by doubt, who commands every room they enter and whose confidence is as unshakable as granite. This archetype is so pervasive that it can lead many of us to believe we are fundamentally flawed, that our innate ways of being are obstacles to be overcome rather than potential instruments of our own unique achievements. What is rarely discussed, yet is profoundly true, is that almost every personality type can work for you, as long as you are self-aware enough to use it correctly. There is no one type of personality who reaches success. Introverted, arrogant, extroverted, anxious, brash. You will find them all at the pinnacle of their respective fields. The key differentiator is not the trait itself, but the relationship you have with it. Consider the trait of introversion, so often mischaracterized as shyness or a social deficit. In a world that seems to reward the loudest voice in the room, the introvert can feel like they are playing a game with the wrong rulebook. They may come home from a networking event feeling drained and inadequate, believing their quiet nature is a professional liability. But this is a fundamental misreading of the trait's power. Introversion is not a lack of something. It is the presence of a deep, internal world. The energy an introvert gains from solitude is not a retreat from the world, but a necessary process of integration, reflection, and deep thought. Where the extrovert thinks by talking, the introvert talks after thinking. This capacity for sustained, uninterrupted focus is a superpower in a distracted world. It allows for the mastery of complex subjects, the cultivation of profound creativity, and the ability to listen, truly listen to what others are saying, picking up on nuances that the louder voices miss. The self-aware introvert does not try to force themselves to become a perpetual party host. Instead, they architect their life and work to leverage their depth. They schedule sacred periods of uninterrupted work. They prepare thoroughly for meetings, knowing their contributions will be well considered and potent. They choose one-on-one or small group interactions for building deep relationships rather than trying to work a crowded room. They understand that their power lies not in the breadth of their acquaintances, but in the depth of their connections and the quality of their work. In this context, introversion is not a barrier to success. It is the very engine of a distinct and powerful form of success. Now, let us take a trait that is almost universally condemned: arrogance. On the surface, arrogance is repellent. It pushes people away, creates resentment, and can blind an individual to their own flaws. The unself-aware arrogant person is a liability to themselves and everyone around them. They believe they have nothing left to learn, and this is their ultimate undoing. However, when we dissect this trait with psychological curiosity, we can find a distorted version of a potentially useful quality, an unshakable, perhaps even irrational belief in one's own capabilities. Think of an entrepreneur pitching a revolutionary idea to 100 skeptical investors. A person plagued by constant self-doubt would be crushed by the first 10 rejections. But a person with a touch of that internal arrogance, a deep-seated, almost bulletproof conviction that they are right and the world just hasn't caught up yet, can persevere through 99 no's to get to the one yes that changes everything. The critical distinction here is self-awareness. The individual who can harness this trait effectively is not blindly arrogant. They are capable of receiving feedback and data, and they can adjust their tactics. But at their core, they possess a foundational self-belief that acts as an emotional shock absorber against the relentless waves of criticism and failure that inevitably accompany ambitious pursuits. They are not arrogant toward individuals in a demeaning way, but they are arrogant in the face of the obstacle itself. They see the mountain, and, while respecting its size, fundamentally believe they are the one to climb it. This is not the arrogance of superiority, but the arrogance of immense self-efficacy, and it can be the fuel for endeavors that would cause more reasonable people to give up. Then there is anxiety, a condition so many people seek to eradicate from their lives entirely. It is experienced as a curse, a constant hum of dread that colors every decision and every potential future. The physical symptoms, the racing heart, the tightness in the chest, the restless energy, are unmistakably unpleasant. Yet, what is anxiety at its core but the mind's powerful capacity for forecasting and risk assessment working in overdrive? The anxious mind is a brilliant simulator of potential negative outcomes. It is constantly running scenarios, asking, what if? The person who is a slave to their anxiety is paralyzed by this process, but the self-aware individual can learn to be the master of it. They can learn to thank their anxious mind for its efforts. Thank you for pointing out that potential risk. I have noted it. And then consciously decide whether the risk is worth mitigating or if it is simply a phantom of an overprotective brain. This hypervigilance, when channeled, becomes a powerful tool for preparation and detail orientation. The anxious project manager anticipates problems others would never see coming. The anxious writer triple-checks their sources, ensuring their work is unimpeachable. The anxious parent has a first aid kit for every conceivable scenario. Their anxiety is not a flaw, it is a highly sensitive radar system. The work is not to dismantle the radar, but to learn to interpret its signals without panic, to use the energy it generates for thorough preparation rather than for debilitating worry. The energy of anxiety is simply energy. The self-aware person learns to redirect that energy into action, into checking lists, into creating contingency plans, transforming a source of suffering into a foundation of impeccable readiness. Even brashness, a quality that can seem like sheer social incompetence, has its place. The brash individual cuts through red tape and pleasantries. They say the thing everyone is thinking, but is too polite to voice. In environments stifled by groupthink or bureaucratic inertia, a brash person can be the catalyst for essential change. They can shatter outdated conventions and force a conversation that desperately needs to be had. Of course, unregulated brashness is destructive. It tramples feelings, creates enemies, and can be perceived as crass and unprofessional. The self-aware brash person, however, understands the impact of their forcefulness. They learn to wield it like a surgical tool rather than a blunt instrument. They choose their moments. They may still deliver the hard truth, but they do so with a strategic awareness of the context and the ultimate goal. They understand that their role is sometimes to be the necessary disruptor, and they accept that responsibility rather than just impulsively saying whatever comes to mind. Their brashness becomes a form of courage, a willingness to bear the social cost of speaking an uncomfortable truth for the greater good of the project or the team. The common thread weaving through all these examples is not the possession of a specific set of good traits, but the mastery of the art of self-regulation, which is born from self-awareness. Self-awareness is the lens through which you observe your own internal machinery without immediate judgment. It is the capacity to notice, my introverted battery is low, I need to withdraw and recharge, or my anxiety is flaring up. Let me use this energy to review my plan, or my arrogant streak is making me dismiss this feedback. I need to listen carefully. This metacognition, thinking about your thinking, is the most critical skill you can develop. It is what allows you to take ownership of your personality, not as a fixed and unchangeable sentence, but as a unique and nuanced toolkit. Your personality is not a life sentence to be endured, nor is it a collection of traits to be proudly displayed without governance. It is a dynamic, responsive system. The goal of personal growth is not to become a perfectly balanced, blandly pleasant individual who has eradicated all their so-called flaws. That is a sterile and impossible ideal. The true goal is to become a masterful conductor of your own internal orchestra. You have the loud brass sections of your arrogance and brashness, the delicate, intricate strings of your introversion and anxiety, the percussion of your passions and drives. A poor conductor lets one section drown out all the others, creating cacophony. A masterful conductor knows when to cue the brass for a powerful defining statement, when to bring the strings forward for a passage of deep sensitivity, and when to use the percussion for dramatic emphasis. They understand that the beauty and power of the music lie in the dynamic interplay of all the sections, not in the dominance of one. Your personality, in all its messy, contradictory, and unique glory, is your orchestra. Your journey toward a successful and fulfilling life is not about replacing the instruments, but about learning the score of your own life so well that you can conduct them all to create a symphony that is uniquely and powerfully your own.